here with Bridget, and we're going to show you how we made these acoustic panels. Bridget's a friend of mine. She's got a band called Bridget, Leen, the Houseplants. I play bass in that band, and she also has a background in carpentry. So she had a lot of the tools and materials that I don't have, and was able to help me put these together.
So as you saw in the intro, we're going to talk about acoustic panels, specifically DIY acoustic panels, and how to build them. I've built a bunch of these panels. You can see some around and behind me. This is more or less the exact same design I used to build all mine. There's a few adjustments you can get to build different variations, which I'll talk about at the end. Why might you want to go DIY? Acoustic material can be very expensive if you've ever looked into it. A comparable panel like the ones I have behind me might cost $50 or $60 to buy, whereas the build cost is more like $10 to $20, depending on how you source your materials. If you're wondering if you can build them, I will say that I do not consider myself particularly handy or skilled with carpentry. This is a very simple design. I build a bunch of them. Doesn't require a lot of skill, and if stuff's a little off, it's really not a big deal, because as long as they absorb sound, they do their job. So you can definitely do it DIY. The other alternative I see people using is acoustic foam. I would highly recommend against it. First of all, it can get really expensive. Specialty acoustic foam might be $8 or $10 per panel, and that's only for a 1 foot by 1 foot tile. That means to get the same coverage as one of my 2 foot by 4 foot panels, you need 8 of them. So already you're at the price of just a traditional acoustic panel you could buy from a manufacturer. In addition to that, foam isn't near as effective as panels. Most of these foam squares are 1, maybe 2 inches thick of lightweight foam material, and they really don't do a very good job of absorbing sound. The sound that they do absorb is only in high frequencies. So you'll end up with a dull, dead sound, but your mid-range and your lows will be totally ineffective. So I would not recommend foam and rant. Build your own panels instead. So let's talk about materials. For the actual sound absorbing material, I'm using Rockwool Safe & Sound. This is easy to get at any hardware store. This is from Lowe's website. It's $50 for a pack of it. It does come in 2 sizes, 16-inch and 24-inch. Most of my panels you see around me are the 24-inch, with a few exceptions, but today we're actually going to use the 16-inch, just because that's what we had on hand. Don't get too caught up in which one. Both of these are actually the same amount of material, because the 16-inch ones come with 12 panels, but the 24-inch ones only come with 8 panels. So maybe you want more thinner panels, maybe you want fewer bigger panels. Either way, you can't go wrong. It's the same material. So whatever you can find works. Here's the design we used for the frame. This is all made out of 1x4s. I got them at Home Depot. They are 48 inches long, and sandwiched in between that is these 15-inch boards. I don't even have a saw, but Home Depot was able to cut the wood for me, so I came home with pre-cut wood in my car. First of all, that means I don't have to cut it. Second of all, I'm driving a Jetta and I'm not going to fit an 8-foot long piece of board in my car, but I can fit all the pre-cut sizes really easily. So I would recommend just getting them to cut at the hardware store. It'll save you a lot of headache. Since a 1x4 is actually 3/4 of an inch wide, we're losing 1.5 inches here and here on the interior dimensions, and 1 inch because of 15 inches. So that will actually sandwich the 4 foot by 16-inch panel, squeeze it in a little bit, give us a nice snug fit. This material is very compressible, so don't worry about that. You want it to be snug rather than loose. This piece right here is just another 15-inch piece of 1x4, is used as back brace. You'll be able to see that more easily when we do the design. If you want to use the 24-inch Rockwool, the only change you need to make is change this 15 to a 23, and everything is exactly the same. Here is our pack of Rockwool and our pre-cut wood from the store. This is the wood to make 2 panels. Here are the tools that we used. Pretty much all of this is Bridget's. I don't even own most of this stuff, so I'm glad that she was able to help me make this video. We have this, which is the fabric we're using to cover. She went with this nice kind of purpley fabric. Previously, I've bought fabric at Joann Fabrics. You can get whatever design and color you want, and customize the look. This is a staple gun and staples used to attach the fabric to the wood, some goggles and gloves, a sanding block just to smooth out any rough edges in the wood, screws, a drill. This is a square to make sure our corners were even, and these are some straps to clamp things together to hold it tight when we drilled our holes. If you don't have all of this, that's okay. I've done this with nothing more than a drill, and that's pretty much it. And just freehanded it, and if they're a little sloppy, they'll still work. The first thing that we did was sand down the edges. You can see some of the wood is a little gnarly around the cut, so I'm just going to take a sanding block and clean that up a little bit. Next, we laid out the design and clamped it together using our straps. We're here building the frame and clamping it in place to make sure it's square and drill our pilot holes. We drilled pilot holes for where the screw's gonna go. We didn't even measure these, just kind of eyeballed them. Just make sure they're centered on the wood. You don't want anything poking through one of the edges. We're using wood screws on this. These are actually self-tapping, but pre-drilling the holes just decreases the risk of the wood splitting and helps us get everything lined up.
You can kind of get them all started and then tighten them like you're putting a tire on a car.
And here's a look at the frame once it's put together. The next step is to put the rock wool inside and do up the fabric. You want to make sure there's enough fabric on all of the edges so that you have enough slack to staple it on the inside. So measure that off, cut it out, and then you can start stapling away. Just make sure you're getting the fabric as tight as possible so you have a clean look on the front once you're done. Watch how Bridget folds the corner of the fabric. You want to be a little bit careful when you do this if you want a clean look, otherwise it can get bunched up and kind of messy looking.
So we did the top and the bottom first because we want this seam, when you're looking at it from the side, you won't be able to see it as much as if it was the other way. So it's kind of just like wrapping a present. And you get this tight, and then this is usually a little more graceful. But yeah, you just pull that up, and then we can just put one right in here to make it beautiful.
And here's the finished product. Beginning to end, it took maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes per panel, and you could definitely go a lot faster if you're skilled with this as well. As you can see, these are nice and squared off, so they'll just stand on their own perfectly fine. But if you want to hang them on a wall, pretty much anything you use to hang a picture frame will work for this. I've just used standard picture hangers and it works fine, but you can get as fancy as you want. Here's how Bridget did hers for her installation in her living room. And here's what they look like installed. The great thing about doing things DIY is you can customize them to meet your needs. You could take this basic design and change it in a few simple ways and pretty much make whatever kind of panel you want. For instance, we have the 16-inch wide ones here. I already talked about how you can do the 24-inch wide ones, but you can also do squares. You could do 4 foot by 4 foot, 2 foot by 2 foot. You can also change the depth. I would highly recommend for corner traps and for getting more base, maybe do a 6-inch deep panel. You could do the exact same design, but instead of using 1x4s, use 1x6s and take 2 pieces of rock wool and put them on top of each other inside the panel. If you want to dive further into acoustic treatment, let me show you some other resources that I really like. One of my favorite websites is acousticinsider.com. They also have a really great YouTube channel talking a lot about acoustic treatment topics. This is their article about DIY build panels. They did a pretty similar design and go into some of the details about how it helped their room. This is a really useful chart, I think. This is his recommendations for materials for absorbing. And he even breaks it down by country. In the USA, you see we have Roxwool Safe and Sound. They changed their brand name to Rockwool, that's the same stuff we use. Or Earthwool or Owens Corning 703. I would say 703 and Safe and Sound are the most common things that I see, and that's what is in all the ones that I've done. But if you're located somewhere else, this might be a very good resource. So acousticinsider.com. Another website that I like for experimenting with the designs of these panels is this acousticmodeling.com porous absorber calculator. You can essentially see how effective an absorber will be at certain frequencies. This is the one we did in millimeters. 75 millimeters is about 3 inches with no rear air gap. So you can see it's pretty much fully effective up till about 500. Then you still get useful absorption down to about 200, and then it tapers off. I recommended earlier for bass, you might want double thick ones, about 6 inches. So let's see how those are. You can see doubling the thickness gets us really nice absorption all the way down to about 200, still a lot down at 100. And you still lose some of these really low frequencies, but this will do a lot of good for fixing low end in a room. Now just to see, I said that 1 inch foam was useless. Let's just see if we make this 1 inch, how pitiful it really is. So there's your 1 inch thick absorbers. You're not really getting anything especially useful above like 1500, 2000. And all of this that you could absorb with these DIY Rockwool panels is getting left on the table. There you have it, building your own DIY acoustic panels. If you use this design, feel free to show me what you've done. You can send me a message at GMH Audio on Instagram. I'd love to see them. Thank you so much to Bridget. She supplied a bunch of these tools and helped me refine the design. I hope you enjoy the panels, Bridget. They look great in your room. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions or think I missed something, feel free to let me know in the comments.